Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. And today I'm doing a Play This Not That of Barenpark versus the Grand Carnival. And Play This Not That, if you're not familiar with the series, is going to be a series where I pick two games and I find some degree of overlap, something that makes them worth comparing, and then I go down a checklist of 6 or 7 different things, anything from theme, mechanics, price point, all those things, and ultimately choosing, or usually choosing, which one I recommend more and why. And no, it does not always mean that the other one is a not that. Sometimes it just means I prefer one over the other. And so, Barenpark and Grand Carnival. And to start us off, what makes these games worth comparing? Now, it's going to be light on this area, but to begin with, they are both Polyomino games. They're very much going to have the typical Polyomino shapes as you're slotting them down into your different parks, either a theme park or a beer park, trying to basically, well, build up the best degree of attraction and ultimately get the most points and win the game. The games are going to share a little bit in the way they look, the visual beigeness of both those games, but then also they will have something that makes them very comparable in the sense that both these games have a degree of goals attached to the core gameplay. In the Grand Carnival, it's going to be a set of cards that give you different abilities. You're going to choose three of these each game, set them up, and players that accomplish those goals will get an ability in the game. Versus in Barenpark, you're going to choose a set of goals that reward you points, not abilities, but points, and those are going to be sets of 3 goals that again give you different objectives to go through across the gameplay that is otherwise the same every game. So a little bit light on the overlap past being Polyomino games. That said, what I will say is the reason Grand Carnival is on my radar is because whenever I told people how much I like Barenpark, I had a bunch of people suggesting this as a replacement. So yes, they're just Polyomino games. That's going to be the main reason they're worth comparing, but ultimately they do seem to come up in conversation together. And so starting off as far as the comparison, as far as what actually, where they lie in their respective areas, starting off with price point. Price point wise, Barenpark's going to come in at roughly $35 or so. The price will range. You can sometimes find it higher, sometimes find it lower. It seems to be the general going price point is going to be in the $35 range, and the Grand Carnival is going to be a little higher at roughly $45. I think that's primarily due to the general availability. Barenpark is a game that I've seen at a bunch of major retailers, and Grand Carnival doesn't seem to have the same degree of presence, and perhaps that's why it doesn't see the same degree of discounting as well. As far as teach and learning, the teach and learning of both these games, that's going to be the aspect of which the games are easier to teach, which ones are easier to learn, all that. I would say Barenpark wins again in that category. Barenpark is a game that is simpler to teach, especially if someone is familiar with Polyomino games to begin with. The general idea of Barenpark is going to be gather Polyomino pieces, put them into your park, and then go ahead and take replacement Polyomino pieces based on what areas you cover, rinse and repeat until your parks are complete. That's basically Barenpark. You know 97% of Barenpark right now, a few other small rules to be aware of, plus of course the goals you're going for. Grand Carnival has an extra layer of depth to it. Now that might pay off in the mechanics section, but as far as the teach and learning, it does make it slightly harder to grasp. You see, in Grand Carnival, you're going to be having your carnival board, which you can kind of see underneath this whole area over here, and to start off with, you're going to be trying to gather these tiles over here from the general track, and you're going to be putting these tiles into your carnival board, which are then going to give you both the pathways your guests are walking through, as well as what areas you can build on. So already it's another layer deep. You're trying to build up your infrastructure, then build your Polyomino pieces on top of said infrastructure. Now that we have something built up, we can go ahead, let's go ahead and throw this over here. Boom. Now we can go ahead and grab this tile, now that we have that area, and put it down over there on top of the infrastructure. So it's an extra level deep. But then past that, you're still not done, because the goal is to make your guests visit the various attractions. Your guests are going to want to walk through the park, stopping next to various attractions, getting different tickets. There'll be a section of scoring over here as you try to figure out having one of each different size attraction will give you points, having multiples of the same size attraction will give you points, having guests who made their way into the big top will give you points. There's a lot more going on in the Grand Carnival. Not that much, mind you. This is not a complicated game to teach by any means, but it certainly is a step up in terms of complexity, in terms of the teach, and in terms of the learning compared to a game like Barenpark. Next up, we have theme. And for theme, I think I want to give it to the Grand Carnival on this one. Now, it is close on theme because the theme of Barenpark is it's a beer park. That's what it is, Barenpark. It's going to be a park about beers. You're building up your park where you just slot in beers into your various park. Now, thematically, that kind of works, except you will notice there definitely are, no pathways. The park is 99.7% beers, with maybe, you could argue, this slight tinge of gravel along the edges as the pathway. You're basically slotting a whole lot of tiles onto this board, and that's kind of where it ends. We're going to see that thematic, we're going to see that complexity, that depth, pay off in the Grand Carnival as it feels much more like what it's trying to be. Now, to be very clear, beer parks versus Carnival, that's kind of a wash for me. I'm kind of fine with both of them. But the Grand Carnival does pay off a little more in making it feel like you're doing something thematic. You are building the infrastructure. You are building the pathways. You are trying to get the guests to move through the park. Both of them give you a very light theme behind it, but the Grand Carnival does a little bit more to back it up and making it feel like the theme that it's trying to present. As far as art and components, I have to give the Barenpark the win on this one, but it's going to be very, very close. The art of Barenpark just, I mean, I love the art of Barenpark. I love that art in general. The Grand Carnival is a little bit, well, I mean, it's solid. Honestly, they're very, very close. I have a hard time giving you a strong win here. I slightly prefer the art of Barenpark, but both of them have solid artwork. Both of them do their themes and their general games justice in terms of the presentation. I mean, granted, there's a lot of beige in both. That may not be your thing. Doesn't particularly bother me, and they both do a very solid job there. Slight win to Barenpark. As far as components, they're basically equitable. I mean, the Grand Carnival has a few more things going on, such as these various guests, so I can argue a slight win for the Grand Carnival just based on the various meeples and production they have extra in their game. But both of them are primarily Polyomino games, which means they They basically both are giving you just pieces of cardboard. And I have a hard time really saying one is that much better than the other. I'll give this one a tie, giving a slight win to Barenpark in terms of the art, and a slight win to Grand Carnival in terms of components, but really they're both fairly equal across the board. Which brings us to mechanics, which is usually the largest section of the game. Mechanics are ultimately what makes the game, what makes these games something I actually want to play. Price, ease of learning, art, theme, all those things are nice, but they're not why I bring a game to the table, and so mechanics is usually going to be the main determination of any winner in that area. And to that end, they both have a general degree of overlap in the Polyomino sphere, but they do have different ways that they play. Whereas Barenpark is far more about just filling every single gap. That's your goal. You're going to have 4 of these across the game, potentially more with the expansion, and your goal is just to fill every single spot with tiles. It's plain, it's simple, it's all about filling things up and getting the points for that. Versus the Grand Carnival is going to be giving you much more going on in terms of, it's not about filling every single area. It's about rather building that infrastructure, then layering things on top of that infrastructure. And you're not going to lay things on top of every single area because you're actually trying to get your guests through the park. So they have a slight difference in terms of the general objectives. In Barenpark, it's play a piece, get a piece. That's all it is. It's play a piece and then get a piece. You're going to play pieces over various spots. You're going to gather pieces based on the various icons you cover, and that's all you're doing. Versus in the Grand Carnival, it's going to be much more action selection in the game. You're going to have a limited number of actions. You're going to have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you're going to be taking different actions, slotting them towards different things. Maybe I want to gather a 5-piece tile, in which case I'll need to spend my 5. Maybe I want to take a piece from the rail yard that's further, the rail yard, which is further back, so I'll have to spend 5 there. Maybe I want to use that 5 to move my guests 5 spaces through the park. You're going to have different strength actions you have to expend across the course of the game. That's your economy. Rather than play a piece, get a piece, you're spending a limited number of actions to get everything you want done in this game. In Barenpark, the pieces are all the points. That's the game. Everything in the game, past the goals, which are going to be these things over here that you're trying to achieve specific combinations of tiles or settings or whatever it is, but mostly in Barenpark, the pieces are the points. That's how you win the game. In the Grand Carnival, there's going to be different ways to get points. There's going to be a set collection. There's going to be the big top. There's going to be a bunch of different areas that you're trying to do to gather points in this. In Barenpark, it's going to be the players trigger the end of the game. Basically, once somebody fills up their entire board, game end is triggered. Every other player gets one more turn. Call it a day. However many turns that takes. Versus in the Grand Carnival, you're playing across a week. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, all the way through Saturday. You have 7 rounds to play the game, so it's more of a round-driven sequence. And then lastly and finally, in Barenpark, you're going to have these variable goals that keep the game fresh every single time, giving you different things to strive for, but they're going to be, again, about the points. Versus in the Grand Carnival, it's going to be rather much more about the cards and the abilities they give you in the game. That's going to be the high-level mechanic overview as far as these games, which brings us to the play this, not that aspect of this video. For play this, not that, this is a close one for me. This very much is a close one where I have a hard time giving you a winner, and I'll tell you why in a second. And Barenpark for me is going to be the winner here. If I had to keep only one of these two games, I would keep Barenpark, although I can make a strong argument that the Grand Carnival is a better game, and most people who have told me of these games told me, oh, you love Barenpark? Get the Grand Carnival. It's better. And I completely understand why, but I wouldn't choose the Grand Carnival over it. I am keeping both, to be very, very clear. Fortunately, no one is making me choose, so I am going to be keeping both. But the reason I prefer Barenpark is both these games are very good at what they're doing. But Barenpark gives me a degree of simplicity that ultimately just feels like a solid Polyomino game. It's a game I'm happy to pull out and play with anyone. There's something tactile and rewarding about filling up your board, filling up your Polyomino board with your Polyomino pieces. To this day, it remains one of my favorite Polyomino games, not giving me the depth and complexity that other games might give, but giving me the simplicity and enjoyment of successfully and just fun filling up of the board with Polyomino pieces and filling every little spot as you put down a piece, gather more pieces, and try to slightly min-max your opponents with slightly better pieces or getting a few goals more. It's simple, it's pure, it's to the point. The Grand Carnival gives you an extra level of depth and complexity that is rewarding. But also it does so on top of a Polyomino game. It feels almost a bit like a mismatch. These scoring objectives, while they are good in this game, I don't have as much of a drive to keep coming back to the Grand Carnival again and again and again. Barenpark is almost zen-like in its fun simplicity. The Grand Carnival is a little more thinky, and yet not so thinky as to be a full different genre. It's not so thinky that I think of it as a rewarding, heavier game. I'm still mostly going to be playing this game with the same people that I play Barenpark with, but I'm going to do so with the understanding that there's a little bit more to teach, a little bit more to pick up, and it's a little bit more of a jump to actually get into the game and find that rewarding moment. I will say I much prefer the cards in the Grand Carnival giving you abilities in the game as opposed to Barenpark giving you the points. While I do like the simplicity of Barenpark, it very much is a one-trick pony. Do a thing, get points. Do a thing, get points. There's not a lot of nuance and depth past place a tile, get tiles, do a thing, get points. That's all it is. The Grand Carnival, I really like having these abilities unlocked in the game. You accomplish a specific setting or objective or whatever it is, and then it gives you some way that your engine is now better than the other players. I find this aspect of the game so much more rewarding, but the rest of it, while I really do enjoy it and while I am absolutely keeping it in my collection, it's just a little bit more complexity built on a layer of the same game that I'd play with the same people, but have to think just one more time whether I'm going to pull it out. Both solid games, but for me, Barenpark is still the winner. I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know which one you prefer and why if you've played both. And if you haven't played both or either, they're definitely both worth checking out. If you like Polyomino games, they're both giving you very similar experiences, very slight nuanced differences in terms of which direction they chose to go. Overall, I will say, one thing worth noting is Barenpark does have the bad news bureaus, which I have not factored into my opinion at all because that wouldn't be fair. Base game to base game is where I went. I will say, I like the bad news bears, but it gives you more of the same. It doesn't give you a high level of extra depth. It just gives you more of the same. Do a thing, get points in Barenpark. I'm very curious what expansions will come for the Grand Carnival, and I hope to see some, because I can see an extra level of depth and complexity taking this out from where it's kind of is to another zone, another point that makes me reconsider which one I prefer. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and I hope you have a good one.